Welcome to Seeking Alpha, the podcast where we're diving deep into crypto, careers, and the chaos of modern dating. I'm Larissa.
And I'm Lindsay. Together, we're two women who somehow found themselves at the intersection of crypto Twitter, Silicon Valley, and Tinder. Larissa, where were you last week?
I was at Bitcoin Vegas and I had a fucking great time, honestly.
It's really good to hear because I went in 2023 and thought it was legitimately the best programming I'd ever seen. And then obviously, as we all know, I went back last year and just had an emotional hangover of a time. It was a election year, 3 weeks after the assassination attempt. Trump was speaking. There was a cult of technology meeting a cult of politics. Everyone was just so angry and loud about it. So I was sad to have lost last year that really high quality programming part. So I'm glad to hear that that may have been kind of back.
Well, here's the thing. I want to talk about this because I know how you spoke about Bitcoin Nashville last year, and I don't think it was that different this year. I think some of the programming was still really angry and somewhat hateful. But I think that it was very different from the Bitcoin conferences that I'd been to previously, because I think the last time I was there was like 2021. At that point, it was still very Bitcoin native ecosystem. This time it was extremely diversified, the attendance. Typically conferences, as most people in crypto who have gone to any conference know, it is a circle jerk of the same ecosystem, or it is a bunch of circle jerks on top of each other because there's sponsors on top of sponsors on top of sponsors for the programming. And then the only people who attend those sessions are the companies who are sponsoring. And there's only a couple speakers who are really worthwhile to listen to. And so it's just really lackluster. This time was extremely different. It was unlike any conference that I've been to in recent years. I always sit in the front row whenever I actually have nightmares that I'm in class and get there and there's no seating in the front row. And then I'm forced to sit in the back. And like I wake up in cold sweat.
That's the most insane take you've had on the show, by the way. Who sits in the front row of a lecture? That's crazy.
So I went close as I could get and had to pass a woman holding a toddler on her lap. And I was like, can I take that seat next to you? She's like, sorry, no, that's my husband. And I'm like, you have your toddler and so this is a family outing for you guys. And so many kids, so many families. And I recognize that it was in large part to see the Trumps because that is a family vacation for some people, but they were engaging with the booths. They were walking around the conference and talking and learning. And it was extraordinarily different from the typical heavy tech bro vibes. So many different types of people. And I say that with there having been a very high concentration still of maxis. And I had the terrible experience of being front row for the Trumps speaking, not because I'm a fan, but because it's what I do. I went up to try and get a picture and so that I could post it in my Instagram story and make fun of them. But then when I turned around, oh my God, this fucking mile-long mosh pit that I had to sift through to try and get out. And that wasn't even before entering like the rows of seating that I had to get through to get out of the room. It was like I was body to body stuck, like having to like elbow my way out. There were grown men, old ass men in suits yelling for the Trumps to get their attention. And what, you think they're going to wave to you, blow you a kiss? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Anyway, yeah, there was still like that caliber of energy there, but the mix of that with small crypto for good projects, furries, kids, which are two things that should never be put back to back in a list, tier one media, really important heavy hitters like Michael Saylor, a bunch of different projects mixed with that crazy maxi Trump energy, I didn't think was a bad thing, because it made me think a lot about how diversified the Bitcoin community is and how it's really unique in that sense. I don't think there is another project in crypto that has such a wide range of people advocating for it. And I think that's part of what makes it so beautiful.
Well, it is the oldest. It's one of the most stable, quote unquote, and it has a very clear use case. It is an investment vehicle. And so I think that that use case actually really matters. We talked about this on the episode with Wasim, and I just actually put up a TikTok about it. Our TikTok, by the way, like kind of slams, just in case anyone was wondering, at Seeking Alpha Pod. But anyways, this is the first time that regular people have been able to get involved with an asset that actually helps to grow and manage their wealth. And you don't have to do it for 250K. You can do it for $20. But I think that the length of time, the clear use case, and the fact that it was the first and its very unique consensus mechanism that allow it to retain that value in some way have really made it a solid thing to be a part of. I will say, to your point, last year, I think because it was an election year, the crowd was very geared towards that. A lot of folks were angry. It was very political. The Trump family are moving away from it being a campaign cycle and more into building an actual business around it. And so there's more of a focus on that part of it. Last year it was fully a campaign thing, which brings in a completely different crowd. I am glad that you had a good time and you went to a really, really cool party. I initially had Roma, which is relief of missing out, which I'm a huge fan of these days, given that I say no to basically nothing. But I did actually definitely have FOMO from the pics you were sending.
A party where there was a bunch of athletes and crypto celebrities, and I kept sending pictures to Lindsay of people and being like, who's this? Who's this? Who's this? I practiced some being Lindsay because it was one of my first times where I actually went into a room, a networking party, and lasted more than 20 minutes, not knowing anybody, literally not one person there. It was so far out of my comfort zone, but I just kept thinking, WWLD, what would Lindsay do? And
What
so
would Lindsay do? Yeah, what'd you
I
do?
was like trying to overhear people's conversations, but then they were like thinking that I was creepy, probably because I was lingering and trying to like look for an in. And so then I was like, okay, there are a bunch of high top tables, people standing around them. So I'm going to stand at a high top table or try and like finagle my way into one. And maybe people will just naturally think I'm part of their conversation and forget that they don't know me and start talking to me. And so at first, not great because, again, a lot of celebrity types and athletes who I wouldn't know from like an average person. And so I was like putting my elbow on a table and then people were like looking at me weird. And then I realized that's because it was Scottie Pippen's table and it was all his people around him. And I was like, shit. Okay, not great.
That was the thing I
So
was
then
most jealous of. I'm a huge Chicago Bulls fan.
but anyway, I was okay, more approachable table. And then I was super nervous, but walked up and put my drink down and was like, hi. To my pleasant surprise, they had all just met and they were all there alone and did not know anybody there either. So immediately I had like a group of people to relate to and connect with. And one of their names was Tao Tao, which was just so fun to keep saying Tao Tao. And it really gave me that confidence boost to like keep going for the rest of the night, talking to people that I didn't know, because before then it seemed like everybody there knew each other. And I think that's like a common feeling when you walk into a place where you don't know anybody. It's like everybody knows each other and everybody knows that I don't know anybody, unless that's just my self-centered view. But then as soon as I started talking to people, it became like home feeling by the end of it.
I definitely have never thought that everyone else knows each other. I pretty much assume that everyone's kind of in the same boat and they don't know that many people there because why else are you at a work event? You're not walking into someone's wedding.
Well,
People
it
don't know
was
each other.
it was an M&A party. It's kind of the same.
That's true, but that's still two companies hosting that are then going to invite all of their friends who don't know each other. People don't know each other at work events like that. It's not the same. I understand feeling uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable at all of them, but I don't feel uncomfortable because I feel like people know each other. That's funny because I have the exact opposite assumption. I'm like, nobody here knows each other. I should just go talk to someone.
Definitely for me was valuable in
You did
reframing how I
it.
approach, yeah, coming out of
Yay.
my introverted little shell.
Yay. That's important. So, okay, let's zoom out and talk about how BTC has affected traditional finance. Because as you mentioned, the crowd is super diverse. There's a lot of people who are invested in it. And so it obviously has been making waves in personal and retail communities, but that has been jumping into larger and larger entities, communities, and structures. Now we're talking about Bitcoin as ETFs, Bitcoin as reserve strategies, mergers. Things are starting to get really heavy on the institutional side, which means that the huge industry of traditional finance is entering the picture. So, do you want to start just kind of talking about what that means for people and why it's important?
Yeah, well, Bitcoin, like you said, has been like a primarily retail asset for most of its existence. People have bought it because they thought that the dollar was too weak or their local currency was too weak and they needed something to hedge against inflation. And so putting it into Bitcoin makes the most sense. Now, with this entry of institutions, it's giving it that sort of legitimacy that it should have had all along, but
Mhm.
that's taken like big behemoths to involvement to recognize among like policymakers and world leaders, things like that.
Yes. So this started really with Michael Saylor at MicroStrategy, and he first bought 250 million worth of Bitcoin in 2020. So MicroStrategy was a whole company by itself. I actually am not 100% sure what they did before Bitcoin.
Business analytics.
So yeah, okay. But so Michael Saylor is the CEO, founder at MicroStrategy. He decided to buy 250 million worth of Bitcoin in 2020 as an inflation hedge. And so, setting the scene for what was going on in 2020, obviously, we know the pandemic, all of that happened. But at that time, there wasn't ETFs for crypto. There wasn't any, like Robinhood didn't have it. Coinbase was a lot smaller. Just 5 years ago, there was a lot fewer options for people to actually be involved in buying and owning crypto that weren't just direct crypto investments. So, you actually purchasing Bitcoin. And so what Saylor did, which is really smart, is he took this publicly traded company and bought a whole bunch of Bitcoin. And then his investors were able to sidestep needing to have the tech expertise to actually go out and buy Bitcoin themselves and instead buy the stock that was backed by a whole bunch of Bitcoin. And so that was a lot of traditional finance, a lot of the first exposure to Bitcoin without needing to actually hold it. And Saylor now holds around 530K Bitcoin, a little bit less. It's more than any government. Basically, the strategy has been to raise debt. So to go out to get investor purchases, to sell shares, to do all those things that you need to do to raise debt, to buy Bitcoin. And then when that Bitcoin is bought, because Bitcoin has been on an upward trajectory since he's been buying it, the stock goes up, and then he's able to raise debt again because he has this increased stock price, and you can repeat. And so he has, for the past 5 years, been repeating this cycle very successfully, and not only successfully in terms of giving traditional finance access, but what I think was really ingenious is he didn't need regulatory approval to launch a Bitcoin investment vehicle. You could simply buy a publicly traded stock. He had the tech expertise to manage the buying and holding of the Bitcoin. And now we're starting to see that strategy replicated, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. It set like a new standard for company balance sheet infrastructure because now 78 companies have Bitcoin on their balance sheet and growing
Yes.
wildly fast, the amount of companies that hold it. And entire nations are beginning to hold it. Like Trump keeps teasing that he will for the US,
Mhm.
but Pakistan at Bitcoin conference actually announced that they've added Bitcoin to their balance sheet.
Multiple states have in the US as well. The Satoshi Project has been really big on working to get that legislation passed for state treasuries.
Yeah, I mean, if you believe in and understand to a degree Bitcoin and the value that it holds in its scarcity and immutability, then it makes all the sense in the world for companies to hold it as well. Because why would they be holding a dollar when they could be holding Bitcoin and its value is 99.999% most likely to go up?
Yes. Well, and so I want to talk about the difference between MicroStrategy and something like GameStop, because GameStop just joined in on this as of May 28th. They announced a 512 million Bitcoin purchase of around 5,000 Bitcoin, and they essentially are just copying the MicroStrategy playbook. Now, what's fascinating about all of that is obviously we know GameStop has been at the center of kind of the speculative meme stock trading craze. And what is being exposed here is that what we think of as complicated things in terms of traditional finance and Wall Street are truly just people betting. GameStop is not announcing a better strategy to serve its customers. It is basically announcing a strategy to continue pleasing crazy people on the internet. And it worked. Their stock price jumped 12% on the announcement. Obviously, they've been struggling. They now have this asset that is probably slated to make them some money if it hasn't already. We're reaching all-time highs all the time, but there is no responsibility towards making that company profitable in the way that that company set out to be profitable. And so, what I'm concerned about is when Saylor did this, he was doing this as a unique and novel thing in an arena that he had some experience in. There's some sort of tech and it's a publicly traded company. So there's some sort of tech and finance overlap that made his strategy make sense. And if he's offering a financial vehicle, an investment vehicle, like that all makes sense. But it seems like any company now could just go out and purchase Bitcoin and have their stock jump and then basically tell investors like, oh, stock's permanently going to go up now that we own Bitcoin. And that just becomes this feeding frenzy of how much people can buy and what they can hold in the different stocks in a way that I'm not sure is healthy or productive, but that I think has permanently been happening on Wall Street. It's just more obvious now. Like
Yeah,
the more I learn about
exactly.
finance, the more I realize all financial markets are just people making shit up, betting money that they don't have, using money that they don't have, cashing in or lying about it, wash, rinse, repeat. And it's like, what is real? What is real about finance?
Trading is literally glorified gambling. And now it's accessible to more people. Now at least people can buy GameStop and people can get in on this, or they can just buy Bitcoin. But if they prefer, they can buy the companies holding Bitcoin. It's the same thing. It's just more accessible. And it adds value to the company inherently because Bitcoin is valuable and going to go up in value. And they could easily be doing some sort of promotional announcements, fabricating some sort of tech development to
Yes.
inflate their stock price, but they're just buying Bitcoin, a hard asset instead. And so in a way, this is more transparent and makes more sense. It's more reliable for the investors who are going to buy GameStop because they know that they have that hard asset to back the stock price.
I do agree with that, but I think at the current moment we're at a bubble, and I don't think it's going to make sense for every single company under the sun to buy Bitcoin in en masse. I think having Bitcoin as a diversified asset always makes sense, but having, 90% of your portfolio as a company in Bitcoin doesn't make sense for every single company out there. But I think that once the kind of interest in it dies down, the second the price dips, there's going to be sharks in the water. That's my concern. So the price of Bitcoin is going to dip and go back up, and that's how Bitcoin works. Overall, it's going to trend upwards, but it is also going to fall at times, and it could fall quite precipitously. My issue is that the markets react to that so strongly, and in particular, the internet reacts to that so strongly that I know in maybe 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, when we have 200 publicly traded companies that all have Bitcoin reserves and all these people are invested in them, that the dip's going to happen and everyone's going to say, you said it only ever goes up. And then we're going to have to defend the industry again. And it's going to create this like endless cycle of, yes, there's volatility involved, but it is a stable asset to hold on its own. When you're not comparing against the dollar, it is a stable asset to hold. It's good to hold in the long term. And so I think I'm already kind of pre-annoyed at the cycle that I know is going to come as a result of all of this. There's going to be too much hype in the beginning. Companies that may have no reason to jump on board as heavily as they are going to jump on board. Then there's going to be a dip. Then that dip is going to cause everyone to freak out. Then the price is going to be more volatile than it needs to be. At some point, the price is going to go back up and companies are going to do this again. Like that's the part of the financial markets that I don't want to be involved in.
I think every company should hold Bitcoin, and not just because I'm a fierce advocate of the asset. I think it makes sense for them logistically. It's financial protection for them, and they should.
Yes.
I think it does. And it is exactly like you're saying. I think it is a race to accumulate as much as possible, but retail can get in on this too. And that's why it's so different than
Hmm.
any other asset. I think it makes sense for everybody to be buying as much as they can because the asset is scarce. And ultimately, like we're going to get to a point where it's just divisions of Satoshis that are being bought and traded. And there's not going to be any new Bitcoin to buy. So why wouldn't any intelligent company or any intelligent investor be buying it? I think
I do
it's
agree with that. I think the degree matters. Like if you're putting your
all,
whole hopes of your company onto it and not reinvesting in your company to actually have the original function of the company, then that's silly. Like if Lowe's switches to doing zero research and development, zero acquisitions, zero mergers, zero hiring, zero openings, and it's just like, no, we're going to put 100% of potential resources into Bitcoin, then I think it's dumb because then over time you're just a Bitcoin holder. You're not Lowe's. Does that make sense? So like it depends on the degree to which you invest, but I think you're right that every company should hold. It's
yeah,
just you have to weigh that against other things, is my point.
yeah. I understand your point. I think your point makes sense. I just, I don't know. I'm torn. I don't know if I think that companies' existence for the purpose of buying Bitcoin is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know.
If every company becomes like that, then there's none left other than Bitcoin, is
Well,
more so what I'm
not
thinking.
every company is going to become like that. That's impossible.
If everyone's maximizing the amount that they can buy, then every company's stock price is not dependent on performance, it's dependent on Bitcoin.
Plus performance.
If there's no incentive to have good performance because you can just count on Bitcoin going up, then companies disappear. They just become Bitcoin companies. That's why this is an extreme, of course, but that's why I'm saying investment. I think you're right that every company should hold Bitcoin because it's an asset that provides you a, a stable guard against inflation and other volatilities. My worry is that a company like GameStop now has zero incentive to actually turn itself around. It just becomes a meme stock and a trading currency and all of that. It doesn't matter what GameStop does at this point. They're a failing business.
I
How
don't
many companies are going to follow that playbook before we start to lose sight of why publicly traded companies exist in the first place? That's my point. It's an extreme, of
yeah, I
course,
just don't think that it's that bad of an issue to have. I don't think it's that different than meme coin creation, which you're not
which is
necessarily defending.
famously going very well. That's my point. Like, that's
Yeah.
my point. I know that inherently, like, we've talked about this. Stocks are speculation. They're kind of their own version of meme coins. That's absolutely true. However, they are tied to real companies that serve real consumers doing real things. And so turning all of that into meme coins, like meme coins famously have very few real consumers doing real things. So it's like easier when one fails. It doesn't matter. Like it's whatever. I mean, it still stinks because people lose money and it's sad. But the point is, these companies are tied to actual products and services. And particularly what I worry about from a more innovation point of view is that companies will stop trying to innovate because they will get lazy because the price goes
Oh,
up. And their whole strategy can just be wait for price to go up. It's not inventing new products. It's not looking for companies to buy. It's not investing in new supply chains or whatever it is. It's just, why would we do anything when our strategy can just be to sit back and wait and have a bunch of meme coin stock traders trading on our stock because we hold a bunch of Bitcoin?
yeah. It's a very strong point.
Now they could turn it around and say now we have more money to invest in innovation, but famously companies don't do that. So
Right.
I want everyone to be a little hungry still.
Right. Right. That's fair. That's fair. I just feel like companies that are going to be lazy and the type of companies that have the culture of doing what you're describing are going to do that anyway. And so I would rather than have the stability of Bitcoin backing and people be operating on that and trading on that versus the
Mhm.
schemes of publicity and trying to move
Yeah.
markets with faux announcements or hollow partnerships and
Mhm.
this bullshitting slew of propaganda in the media that they try and manipulate their stock with. I would rather them just have Bitcoin and sit back.
Super true too. And you know what's funny is I actually think that what you're describing makes way more sense in the long term. And I am very concerned that the short-term bubble of companies jumping in on this is going to destroy the long-term strategy.
I don't think it's a bubble. I think it makes sense
I mean
in
the bubble in that like everyone just jumping on and announcing that they're buying and like the like hypey news cycle that's already coming out and every company being like, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, and like not thinking about what it means and that kind of thing. And then, like I said, when that first dip happens, everyone freaking out. I think in the next 1 to 2 years, this is going to be annoying as fuck. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I also think that the amount of companies adding Bitcoin to their holdings will reduce the volatility to a degree. I mean, we're getting to a point where it should start dipping soon. And I don't think it'll dip as prominently as it has in the past because
Yeah, I
there's
keep wondering about that.
significantly more institutional holding now. There's a lot of major holders who say they're not going to sell. We'll see what actually happens. But logistically, it's a lot more difficult for the ship to turn now that the ship is so much bigger and the ship involves institutions and bureaucracy. We haven't seen this in a past cycle of this degree of bureaucracy and quote unquote legitimacy.
I do think you're right about that, though, and I do think that the volatility is going to look a lot different this cycle. I think I'm just pre-annoyed at what I see happening and what I know is going to play out on crypto Twitter, and I think that's making me a little bit bitter. When in reality, I am a fan of companies buying Bitcoin.
Think bigger. Think beyond
I
crypto.
know, but like I just don't want to deal with it.
I know. So you're gonna think this is crazy then to add to the chaos. So this Kindly MD Nakamoto merger, have you not? You have not. Okay, so
No, girl. PR me. Let's go.
okay, so Nakamoto is the company created by David Bailey, the founder of Bitcoin Magazine and the Bitcoin Conference itself. He created this holding company. Their only thing is to hold Bitcoin. They just had a reverse merger with Kindly MD, the healthcare company, which does like on demand video calls, like telehealth, like all that stuff. They also prescribe weed. But Bitcoin is in its wellness era now because now Kindly MD owns Nakamoto and all of its Bitcoin. And basically, a publicly traded healthcare company is now holding Bitcoin via Nakamoto. And ultimately, they're going to seek to acquire businesses that are Bitcoin native, furthering the Bitcoin ecosystem, etc.
What's a reverse merger?
It's when a private company becomes a public company by purchasing control of the public company. But in this case, it was
Oh,
crazy.
so
It was like
usually,
some triangular situation,
I don't know.
which
This is like a really complicated NBA trade when there's like draft
yeah,
picks and it's three teams. Okay.
it was a very unique and specifically engineered transaction to be entirely compliant, but also secure and transparent, and to have Bitcoin at the center of it ultimately. But
Oh,
now
well,
the
congratulations
company,
to those lawyers because they for sure cashed the hell out on writing this deal.
I represent the lawyers. That's how I know all this.
That's so funny. I didn't know that. Give them my regards.
But yeah, so now the deal was structured so that Nakamoto is a wholly owned subsidiary of Kindly MD, and it trades as one unit on the stock exchange
Oh,
under the ticker Naka.
dude.
And so there was criticism about both doing it just for the brand purposes. But ultimately, like we talked about, it makes sense for companies, even healthcare companies, to have Bitcoin as part of their financial infrastructure as a holding. Kindly MD is serving real people, they have real products, they're innovating in the healthcare space. But now they simply hold Bitcoin through this reverse merger with Nakamoto.
Acquisition? It was a merger and acquisition. You need to leave you rolling your eyes like that in the cut. That was spectacular. It's like funny because I do believe in all of this, but I like have lost my optimism that like people will react normally and markets will behave normally. And
Why
it,
would you
I
ever
don't
think
know.
that though?
I
Nothing
know. I
about
don't
markets
know.
is
I don't know. I
rational.
don't know.
Markets
Like I'm
are
already
the most
irritated at the
irrational,
discourse.
most
I know, I
insane.
know, I know, but I used to be not in the circles where I had to hear
Millions
about it, and
take
now I
after
have to
Bitcoin
hear
and
about it.
enter their wellness era. Perhaps you need to be seeking help from Kindly MD and get a weed
I
prescription.
do. Okay, that I no, I would never. But thank you for thinking that. I do think I'm just like bitter around the discourse of bringing TradFi problems into this, and I hate it and all that stuff. But I also know that this is incredibly important for growth. I will also say I've seen a lot of folks talking about how they tried to get nonprofits years ago to purchase Bitcoin. Jarrett Carpenter is one of those people. He's been in the intersection of nonprofit and crypto for a long time. And one of his early strategies, like 4 or 5 years ago, was to say to nonprofits, like, hey, just buy one or two Bitcoin with your holdings. And what would have happened if any of them had listened because they'd have so much more money to do good with. And so I know that I sound bitter and I am nervous, but at the end of the day, I still think that this is all a good move. I think I'm just hesitant because I know that the worst people are also going to be in control of these moves at times. And I already know the media is going to flip out over the narratives, and I'm just like pre-annoyed at all of that.
But there is the key difference that now these nonprofits can still get in at the bottom floor.
I
Like,
know.
and it's the first time. Like, it's not
Mhm.
as though they had like, you can be bitter about the potential outcomes of the opportunity, but ultimately, like, they haven't had this opportunity in the past. So it's better,
Mhm.
it's champagne problems compared to the inequality that existed before.
100%. But I also am very wary that that inequality can will be manipulated and exploited as much as possible. And the people that do that are the ones that are coming into these markets.
Yeah, because
So,
because they're exploitated by default. They're profiteering companies, but before markets and finance and economics were still exploited by the same people and nobody else had a shot.
you
Now at
know,
least companies, people, organizations beyond them have a shot.
well, and to your point, it's way more transparent. Again, I am like very old man yells at cloud right now. I am usually so optimistic and so hopeful, but for whatever reason, I'm just like, I'm having it out with the industry at the moment personally and with finance in general because I'm like, all of you are lying and all of you have been lying and all of you are going to keep lying. And stay away from Bitcoin, leave it for me.
Well, you better start buying more.
I know. All right. Do we have listener questions? Oh,
Dream.
can I make a disclaimer? If you are married in a serious relationship, do not DM us. Stop. Do not hit on us. Do
You
not
can you
do
can
not
for
do
sure,
that.
you
Stop.
can for sure be married and be a fan. Do
Yeah,
not
I should be really
hit
clear. Don't be
on
weird.
us.
Don't be fucking weird.
If you're married, you're friend zoned.
Yes, permanently. And
And
as you
that
should be. You should be friend zoning yourself. Well, I shouldn't have to do it for you. God.
apparently that is not intuitive.
I cannot fathom why. But yes, if you are in a committed relationship of any kind, do not be hitting on us or anyone else for that matter. Be in your relationship. God.
Okay. That said, first question, do you think you intimidate men?
I think you do, Larissa. I don't think I do.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll quote Margaret Atwood on this one and say, do I intimidate people? Sure. But don't ask me why. It's not my problem.
I mean, that's kind of true about perception at large, though, too. You
Yeah.
know, like as long as you're putting something out that is positive and kind to the world, I don't think you have to be nice to everyone. I think you have to be kind. As long as you're doing that, it's really on them how they perceive you.
Yeah. Do I intimidate men? Sure. I don't know. I don't really give a shit because I am not men. So like, well, actually, that's funny because I'm wearing a shirt that says I'm a man. But yeah, I don't know. I really like who I am and don't feel inclined to change any part of it based on what somebody may or may not be turned off by. So we've discussed this in the past too, as to whether the whole ambitious woman persona scares men. Like, I don't know. I think it's pretty dumb if it does. But also, I don't have an informed opinion on it because I'm not a man and I'm an ambitious woman and don't think twice about how somebody might perceive that. So, yeah. Dream pod guest stars and why?
Oh, that's such a good question. We actually have someone who was on my very, very short list who reached out to us to come on, so I'm hoping that that happens. But other than that, my like always permanent dream is Paris Hilton. She is the OG influencer. She is the first one who figured out how to use the internet to be able to build a brand. She is the reason why personal brands exist. She has innovated in so many different industries. She stays up to date on technology and tech trends and is continuously evolving, chasing new things, setting her mind to things, and absolutely crushing them. I just have so much respect for her, down to changing her voice to be more personable. Like that, the whole act that she created to get fame and to then leverage that fame to build her wealth is nuts. Not necessarily a path I want to follow because I'm not one that like really
Oh
wants
God, if you
that
start doing the
level of
baby
fame.
voice, I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah, no, it's not the path for me, but especially for a woman going in the 2000s, her era where she perfectly played the system. She's done stuff in fragrances that people haven't. She is just so smart, and I would love to have a genuine conversation with her about how she's able to continuously find new arenas to innovate in and how she's able to just continue leveraging what she's built to build even more. Yeah, so Paris Hilton, always. That's my queen.
My dream guest would be Naval Ravikant because I love him and because he is a powerhouse of wisdom and like a genie pulls out of answers out of his ass to any question that are stupendous. Just forever enlightened by him and every single word that he says blows my mind. Um, thoughts on Kraken selling on-chain US equities?
Good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I think US equities going on chain is absolutely fucking brilliant with
Yeah.
it's becoming 24/7
Hmm.
non-US investors being able to access them. I mean, now like farmers in Kenya can buy US equities. Like what? That is fucking insane. Everybody wants access to US markets. Like US is the global top tier of finance and nobody has had exposure outside the US beyond millionaires and billionaires to US markets
Yeah.
and now they can. Like that's absolutely fucking incredible. And the fact that it's on chain makes it so much better, but it's more about like that top layer of accessibility being global. Like that's insane. It's insane.
It is
And also
insane. Great
it'll pump
take.
stocks. But
I just want to make sure that everything is transparently backed. That's the biggest issue that I have. So, as long as there is a clear way of tracking what those equities are, as long as the investments are clear, it's not just, like the US equity token, and then you can't see what's in that token or what the holdings are or
no,
what it's
no,
following.
it's like 1-to-1 backed by a US equity.
Okay, gotcha. Then yeah, that's completely fine.
PubKey review, if either of you have been. Have you been to PubKey? We need to go next time
Never.
you're
Yeah, we should go.
okay, it's great. Dive bar, very dive bar vibes. I actually had a date take me there, and this was one of the red flags of many. But he knew that I was super into crypto and was like, "Oh, let's go to this awesome bar. It's a surprise." And we go to the pub key and we get inside, and I'm like, "Oh my god, you took me here because it's a Bitcoin bar." He was like, "Oh no, they have my favorite beer,"
Oh,
and I was like, "Ugh."
that's
But yeah,
lame.
PubKey's great. PubKey's great.
Good.
Great. We'll do a live app from
Okay.
PubKey. Our first live
I
app
was
will
thinking
be
about
from
that. I think
PubKey.
it'd be really fun to do one on PubKey, actually.
Yeah.
I could be the
Okay,
grumpy
so
Bitcoiner.
live app coming from PubKey soon this summer.
This is manifestation happening in real time. Yes. Can we end with a very special guest? Well, two
Please.
special guests. Okay. I want everyone to meet Sebastian. I woke him from his nap, but he's here. This is Sebastian. I love him.
I'm trying so hard to pretend to like cats.
I know you are. It's okay. I'll keep him. There she is. Hi, Maisie.
Thank you guys so much for listening to our first ever record from home episode.
Follow the pod. Leave us a 5-star rating and review.